All right, so welcome to the Ascension Series. So this is potentially part one of three, but we'll see where we go from here. It might be more, we'll see. So tonight's conversation is called specifically When Authority Ascends, okay? Because I believe that's exactly where a lot of us are right now. And we've been doing a lot of work quietly, right? And a lot of times it's the work that people haven't seen or heard about just yet, but that work behind the scenes that's really laying the groundwork for what's next, right? So a lot of us have already built our storehouse. We've been preparing, we've been structuring, we've been putting things in place, and we know that our season has officially shifted, right? And so tonight, we're going to start giving language to that season. And we're going to talk about what happens when preparation finally meets the right opportunity. Okay. When the door opens and you're already ready, right? When your authority no longer has to announce itself because the structure that you've built and the preparation and the stewardship that you've done speaks for you. Okay. So we're going to talk about what that looks like. And so before we get into that part of the conversation, I do want to make sure that everyone in this room has the context they need to really fully receive what I'm about to share tonight. Because tonight, like I said, is part one of a three-part series. And the series didn't just start tonight, it started at the beginning of the year. And so in February, when we talked about a governed life, the central idea was that identity was never meant to stop at awareness, right? It was always meant to lead to embodiment, walking it out, living as that person. And so we talked about what it means to lead from identity, not to perform who you're becoming, but to be who you already are, right? And we walked through those principles, those governance principles that we walked through last month. And so after we walked through the principles, we talked about everything from, how boundaries are about movement, not just about stating what you need or what you want, but actually enforcing it, right? We talked about peace being a product of structure. It's something that you have to architect. It doesn't just happen in your life. You have to make sure that it's in place. We talked about the principle that belief must become or must influence your behavior. Otherwise, you don't really believe it. So we talked about all these principles. Then in March, we took that conversation into growth and we asked, what does it look like to govern before you grow? To build the structure before the scale arrives and to make sure that what you're building can actually hold or actually sustain what's coming next. Because we all know that ascension is coming, right? Because you're building towards something, but how do you make sure that you can actually sustain it? So we talked about that. And then we talked about some of the principles with Joseph as an example of this in action, right? So, excuse me, we didn't just talk about Joseph in the typical sense, because everybody knows about Joseph the dreamer, right? Everybody knows about Joseph the governor, but we talked about Joseph as the steward. We talked about him as the one who literally governed every single environment that he was placed in, whether it was his father's house, whether it was Potiphar's house, whether it was the prison. And yet he never allowed any of his circumstances to redefine his identity. And so he showed up as the leader he was born to be, regardless of what any of his situations and circumstances tried to tell him until that moment came, right? When Pharaoh had the dream. And so we talked about how what made what Joseph did so important was that all the other wise men could not interpret that dream, right? But then there was somebody in the room who remembered, right? There was a man who carries what is needed. There was somebody in the room who had experienced Joseph's gift before and remembered him in that moment, right? They remembered that encounter with him and they remembered that they met somebody who carried the solution that they were looking for. And so because of that, Joseph was brought out of the prison and then he stood before the most powerful man in the land, in the country, right? And he didn't just interpret the dream. He came with the framework, he came with the plan, he came with a storehouse strategy. And so the strategy was that in those years of increase, he would store a portion, then build the infrastructure now, right? To prepare before the crisis came, before the famine came. And so that plan, that architecture is what qualified him for the seat, for the role, for the position of governor. So it wasn't just his talent or his gift alone, right? Because a lot of us can be talented, we can be gifted, but there's another component, right? It was his preparation. And so let me back up for a moment because there is a part of the story that we don't talk about enough. Before Joseph stood before Pharaoh, right? The cupbearer. There was a cupbearer in prison and he had interpreted his dream. And so he told him In 3 days, you're going to be put back in position. You're going to leave the prison, be put back in position. And Joseph asked one thing of him. He said, remember me when you go back to Pharaoh. Mention me, right? That's what he wanted. He said, just remember me. Mention my name in the right room when you get there. That was the one request that Joseph made. Hey, Khadijah, welcome. And so the scripture says, after the cupbearer left the prison, right? He totally forgot about Joseph. The one request that Joseph made, he didn't honor it. And so, hey, love, 2 full years passed after that happened. Okay. 2 years of Joseph still being in prison. 2 years of wondering if the promise that he got when he was younger was actually real. 2 years of governing himself in a place that had no outward evidence of what was spoken over his life. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Pharaoh has a dream. And the scripture says, the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh saying, I remember my faults this day. What was his fault? That he didn't mention Joseph's name in the right room like he asked him to. Right? So he said, I remember my faults this day. And in remembering his faults, he was really saying he remembered Joseph. And I think somebody needs to hear this tonight, that there are people who should have spoken your name in rooms and they did not. There are doors that should have opened sooner or felt like they should have opened sooner and they didn't. There are connections and opportunities and moments that seem to forget that you were there. But here's what I do know, that there's about to be a problem that God highlights that you were literally designed and created and purposed and appointed to solve. And when that problem arrives, this is what I've been preparing you guys for all these months. When that problem arrives, someone is going to remember their faults concerning you. Somebody is going to say, I know someone. I know exactly who can handle this problem. And your name is going to be spoken in the right room. I want you guys to hear me tonight. Your name is about to be spoken in the right room. Not because you campaigned for it, not because you forced the door, but because you were faithful in the seasons where you couldn't see it yet. Because you continued to steward and to prepare and to work at it, even when you didn't have the full picture. Because you chose to govern yourself and your life and your business, right? And the people that you're leading. Because you chose to govern in those in-between seasons. You kept building that storehouse when nobody else was watching. Nobody even knew it was happening. Nobody was applauding you for it. And most importantly, you were positioned and prepared for what you asked for, what you prayed for, what you were hoping and desiring for. And I hope you find comfort in this, that if it had happened sooner, it wouldn't have been the right timing. It wouldn't have been the right timing because the alignment wasn't there yet. The preparation wasn't complete. The structure wasn't ready yet to hold what's coming. But this year, your name is about to be spoken. And the solution that you have been stewarding, that you've been preparing, that gift that you've been governing and mastering, and that skill set that you've been working on, it's about to be required in the right rooms by the right people. And so the only question is whether you'll be ready to ascend when it is. Will you be ready? And here's what I want every single person in the room tonight to understand. Joseph didn't become someone new in that throne room. All he did was step fully into who he had always been. It's not about becoming, it's not about striving to become something else. It's about walking in who you are fully, authentically, unapologetically. And so governance helped him to keep his identity intact through every season. So when that moment came, he was already whole. He was already ready. He was already himself. And that's what we've been building towards for the last few months. Okay, that's what those months were for. And so tonight we're going to start talking about the moment that preparation meets opportunity, the moment that the storehouse proves that it was worth building, before the crisis came. The moment that authority stops waiting and ascends into greater influence. Okay. So let's go back to that moment one more time, because I think there's one more layer in the story that we haven't fully unpacked yet. So after we talked about Joseph the steward, right? The one who governed, the one who never let circumstances redefine him, etc. Tonight, I want to talk about his ascension, because this is a very important part of the story. Because there's a specific moment within Joseph's account, right? Within his story, where everything that he had prepared in private suddenly became visible in public. Sorry, I had to let somebody back in. So let's set the stage, right? So after the dream, after nobody could interpret it, suddenly somebody in the room remembered him, right? We covered all that. Joseph didn't have to campaign for that moment, though. He didn't have to convince anybody that he was ready. Think about that. His preparation had already done the work, right? It did the heavy lifting. So he walked into that room. He exercised his gift by interpreting the dream. He presented the framework, the strategy, the solution. Pharaoh looked around at the entire court after that, at every counselor, every advisor, every wise man in his court. And then he said, "There is no one as discerning and wise as this man." That is what ascension looks like. It's not striving, it's not performing, it's when preparation meets the right moment. Okay, where the specific genius that you were born with, the specific skill set that you have, the specific problem that you were born to solve meets the right moment. And so here's what I want you to understand tonight. Joseph didn't become somebody new in the throne room. He simply stepped fully into his true identity. And the identity that he embodied all those years was finally revealed to the right person in the right environment with the right authority to elevate his position. So that's three components, right? The right person, the right environment, the right level of authority to elevate him. So if you are taking notes tonight, write that down. That's going to be important. So the governance and the stewardship that he did in those seasons before, like we've been doing in these months before, is what made that possible. It kept his identity intact through every season. And when that moment came, he was ready. He was prepared. Most importantly, my favorite word, he was positioned. Okay? And that is what authentic ascension looks like. So it's not about ascending into a new persona, becoming a new person. You ascend into the fullness of who you already are. So let's talk about that moment, because from the outside, to people who don't know how diligent and intentional that you have been all this time, right? It's going to look like luck when it happens. It's going to look like, oh, they were in the right place at the right time. It's going to look like, oh, something just opened up. But from the inside, what it feels like when you ascend is recognition. Not surprise, recognition. That deep knowing that says, this is what I was born for. This is why I'm here. This is what governance and all the personal growth and the education and all these things that I did to prepare. This is what it was helping me to prepare for, right? This is the moment the storehouse was built for. This is the moment when it finally happens. And in that moment, when it comes, you won't have to scramble. All you have to do is take one intentional step of obedience. And that step is only possible when three things are in place. Like we said before, number one, when your identity is actually embodied. It's not this concept that only lives in your mind, but isn't executed through your actions. You fully embody it. You embrace it. You own it. You live it. Right? You know who you are so fully that no room, no title, no opportunity, no circumstance could ever redefine you. That's embodiment, where your behavior and your decisions finally align with who you know you are and where you know that you're going. Number two, your positioning is aligned. The way that the world sees you finally matches the authority that you actually carry. So that when the door opens, the right people recognize you immediately, right? You don't have to explain yourself in the room because your business, your brand, your reputation has already done that work for you. And number three, you have structure that can hold the weight that comes with an increase of influence and responsibility. Okay, what you've built can actually sustain what's coming. The systems that you've built, the boundaries that you set in your personal life, in your business, right? In ministry for some of us, the storehouse that you've prepared and that you've built and that you've stewarded so well. These were all in place to hold the next level without it collapsing under the pressure of your growth. And so when those three things are aligned, identity, positioning, structure, ascension is no longer just a leap, right? It's the natural next step. It's a natural progression. And so to everyone else, it might look quick, but you know the work that you've put in. And when you're ready, you just take that step. And so governance is what makes ascension authentic. And I want to say something that I think is very important. A lot of leaders want to ascend, right? They want the next level, the bigger platform, the greater influence, the expanded reach, more visibility, especially visibility. Everybody says they want visibility. But ascension without governance is just exposure. And exposure without identity can be very dangerous. Because if you haven't done the work of mastering yourself, of governing yourself, then your decisions, your boundaries, your positioning, your beliefs, all of those things, then your next level doesn't really elevate you. It ends up revealing you. Okay. So governance is what makes ascension authentic. It's what ensures that when you rise, because you will, when you rise, you will bring the real you with you, right? Not a version of yourself that was built for this room and that room, not a performance that's designed to impress people, but the leader that you've been becoming in those quiet seasons. And so that's why we started with governance for the first part of the year. And that's why we spent 2 months building that foundation. Okay. So, excuse me, guys. Maybe time for me to drink my tea. Oh, all that talking makes me a little thirsty. But just tap in really quick and let me know if you're still with me. Okay, you guys good? Everybody with me so far? Want to make sure before I move on. You guys good? Thank you, King Jesse. Appreciate it. All right, good, good, good. Sean said yes. Are we good? Okay, I see a thumbs up. Perfect. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. All right. So yeah, so the point is that you govern so that you can ascend without losing yourself. Because you want to remain authentic as you step into greater influence, right? That's what we want. We want that authentic authority. And so you build the storehouse so that in seasons of increase, you're not caught off guard or unprepared. You align your identity, your positioning, and your structure so that when your authority ascends, it ascends as the real you, right? Fully, authentically, and my favorite word, undeniably. Undeniably. And before we get into the reflection part of tonight, because I know we're about at 8:30 and I want to make sure we have time for questions because I love doing, the Q&A and actually answering the questions you guys have for me. I want to highlight this because this might be one of the most important things I say tonight. You have worked too hard and come too far, too far to stay underpositioned. So the question is no longer whether you are ready, but the question is whether you will step into what you've already prepared for. Or are you going to keep allowing counterfeits to benefit from the position that you were meant to occupy? Because that's what happens when we don't step into position, right? Somebody else fills the position temporarily. So I know that might sound a little harsh, but hear me out. When the right person, you, is not positioned, The space doesn't stay empty. It gets filled by someone else who was bold enough to seize it. Not out of malice, of course, but because nature doesn't like a vacuum. Let's be real. So the people who need your solution could possibly be, being served a solution that was never designed for them in the first place. And they don't know that they're missing out because the real solution hasn't shown up yet. So I'm not saying that it's about competition or anything like that, but it is about assignment, right? Because all of us do have an assignment, all of us do have a purpose. So I want us to keep that in mind as we govern ourselves going forward, and making sure that we're really positioning our businesses as the solution that we carry, right? Whether it's a business, whether it's ministry, whether it's any aspect of leadership, it's very important to keep that in mind. And then you ascend, not for the title, not for the platform, but because your audience is waiting for the real thing. They're waiting for the real solution to show up. Show up. Right? That solution is you. Show up. Seize it. All right. So let me do a little pause here and bring this into the room. So we've been talking about ascension as a concept, but now I want to make it a little bit more personal for us because that's what's really going to be the takeaway for tonight, right? So I want us to sit with a couple of questions and we can talk about it. I'd love for us to talk about it if you guys are open to it. I'm here to answer your questions, to have the dialogue, because that's really where the growth happens and the clarity happens. So just be as honest as you can with yourself as I go through some of these questions, because we're going to talk about it together. So looking back at the last 2 months, what has governance produced in your life? What decision, what structure or shift can you point to and say, that was governance at work. That was me stewarding. That was me preparing. That was me making sure that I'm ready. Just think of one thing that you've done. And you guys can feel free to come off of mute for this part if you want to chime in. One thing that you've done to prepare or to steward.
I would say continuous education.
Ooh, that's good. Okay. That's very good. I love that. And I love the fact that you're investing in in your skill set, investing in your education, because competence is just as important as capability and as the call. So that's awesome. Okay. Anybody else want to share one thing that they've been doing that helped them to prepare, structure, steward? Okay. Creating more spaces to move creatively. All right. That's awesome. Anybody else want to share theirs? Oh, okay. I see a comment coming. Okay. Getting in rooms where I'm connected with others. Ooh, that's a big one. Because, something people always say, like, I want the right door to open. I want the right door to open for me, right? But doors are not opportunities, doors are people. So the relationships that you cultivate, the relationships that you invest in, they really matter. So it's very important to get into not just any room, but the right rooms, right? And talking to the right people, having the right conversations. And that comes from really knowing who it is that you're called to serve too. So that's awesome, Khadijah. I'm proud of you for that. Okay. If I were to share mine, I would say, oh, we got somebody else coming in. If I were to share mine, I would say that I prepared a workshop before I even got the gig. That was one thing that I did. I decided that I was ready to do more speaking this year. So I went ahead and prepared a workshop ahead of time. And I ended up getting an opportunity to go to an expo and do the workshop. And it went really, really well. So that was one example. Just preparing for what I was asking for. Thank you, Khadijah. But that's how it happens. Like, you prepare for it first. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you prepare with, what you have. And then when you get the opportunity, you're not left scrambling and trying to figure out what to do next, right? You're already prepared. You have something. And then from there, it's just about perfecting it, not about creating it. Okay. Next question I want us to think about and talk about. Where do you sense that your ascension season is showing up right now? What door has opened or could potentially open for you? That feels like it's the result of what you've been building towards. Do you see any signs of it yet? Now, Khadija, I'm going to look at you because you've had a lot going on lately. Okay, that's cool. Somebody said not yet. Speaking, oh, love that. Okay. Speaking opportunities. That's right. Anybody else? Any doors that have opened or look like they could be opening for you soon? Okay. Oh, there she is. She said, yes, my opportunities have allowed me to host a class. Yes, I know that's right. And getting in private events, sponsoring my desserts. Yes, I love it. Okay. Okay, so I'm talking to the right crowd tonight. So you're seeing the doors starting to open, right? Because of your consistency, because of your preparation. All right, that's the beginning stages of ascension. Okay, maybe the next time we'll talk about momentum because I feel like that's the hardest part. When you start ascending is maintaining the momentum. That could be a good one for next time. But yeah, so that's a sign that is happening for you. Yes, I love that, Vincent. He said partnerships with big companies for my magazine. Yes, I love that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. So I'm glad you guys are starting to see some results from your consistency. That's huge. Okay. So let's celebrate that. Come on, doors. All right. So the third thing I want us to think about of the love the energy of the three pillars that we've been talking about tonight, the identity, the positioning, the structure, right? Which one do you feel like is the most ready for your next level? Your identity, your positioning, or your structure? And which one do you think needs the most attention before you step through that door? Let's get real about it. Who wants to go first? Let's have the conversation, y'all. And the question was of the three pillars that we talked about earlier, your identity, having aligned positioning, and your structure, which one do you feel like is the most ready? Like you feel like, yes, I got that on lock. And which one do you feel like needs the most attention before you step through your next door?
For me, if I can share,
Of course.
identity is I have it on. I believe I have it on lock, and structure is what I need to work on.
Okay. Love it. Thank you for the honesty. Okay. Structure. Okay. So when you say structure, what do you feel like? Is there any like specific area that you feel like you need to kind of prepare a little better?
Yeah, yes, you. A lot of the items and the information that are given today is very eye-opening because you feel so passionate about a movement or and you know you're called for this. But if
Mm-hmm.
you don't structure it right, and you like you were saying, you can get out there with the right information and then get exposed because you haven't done the work. So
Mm-hmm.
that comes to structure, and that for me is being able to identify that and structure is okay. Then now, what does structure look like? Now I'm breaking that down under the umbrella of what? What is it? Speaking what? Speaking to who about what? What's the impact? What's the outcome?
Mm-hmm.
That type of structure.
Okay, okay. So more clarity about exactly who you're called to serve and
Who
how.
I'm called to serving and how to go about actually what does that look like actually serving that, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Um, okay. Anybody else want to add to? Oh, in the comments? Okay. Um, okay. So you said I have my identity, but structure is what I need to work on. Okay, so that seems to be
Can
pretty
you guys
common.
hear me?
You're not alone.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Kind of crazy. I'm gonna say I have identity on lock,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, I feel like that's something I need to improve on at the same time. And
Okay.
I know that sounds crazy, but
No, it
like
doesn't.
I know who I am, but my dilemma be serving in both places because I have Kingdom
Mm,
Culture magazine and servicing both types of audience as far as the kingdom, but as far as business also. So some business settings
got you.
are different from, church and kingdom, and so just trying to serve both and walking in that thin line and making sure I hold the standard.
Yeah, that's actually that's actually a very good point. What I will say to that is when it comes to, so I think it's very easy for us to operate in ministry, right? Like we know how to communicate in that arena, correct?
Correct.
But when it comes to business, now you have to be aware of the fact that you're going to meet and encounter people that don't believe the way that you do, right?
Correct.
That don't share the same beliefs or principles that you do, and that's okay, right? But at the same time, you want to keep that in mind because when you're communicating, you don't want to be off-putting, and I think that's what can be a little tricky to navigate, right? Is that you don't
Yeah.
want to be off-putting to others. So what I would say is when it comes to business, lead with wisdom and with principles.
Yeah.
And that's what makes people really want to inquire more about you and what you believe is when you can demonstrate it. They really see, yeah, I think in the business arena, people really start to see what you believe by the wisdom that you share. So you don't have to be super churchy or use a whole lot of cliches, but the wisdom that you provide is what's going to really make them pay attention,
I
if I'm
like
being
that.
honest with you.
I like
Um,
that. I like that. True.
mhm. Yep, just like with Joseph, it was the same thing with Joseph because Pharaoh believed in all these different gods, right? They didn't share the same faith, but wisdom speaks for itself. And so when Joseph spoke, that's exactly what Pharaoh said. Who is as wise as this man? Nobody else is as wise as him. That's how you get the attention. And then all that's left to do after that is the follow through with your lifestyle. But you don't have to try to go over the top with it when you share your faith, right? You demonstrate and you lead with wisdom. So I hope that helped. um, okay. So last one I want us to talk about really quick. Did anybody else have anything to add to that? To the one about which one you have really strong and which one you think needs a little bit of work? Or did everybody have a chance to answer that? I think everybody did. Okay, just wanted to be sure. All right, so the last one I want us to think about and talk about together is what would it look like to step into your next level as all of you, being fully yourself? What does that look like? Not performance, not the overly polished version that you think people want, because they really don't. But the leader that you've actually become through this season of governance. What does that look like? What does that feel like when you think about it? What would be different? What would be different if you just showed up fully as yourself, not as who you think people want you to be? Okay. Vincent said impactful. All right. Don't be afraid to come off mute, guys. I love the dialogue. Talk to me. Okay. Impactful. I like that word, impactful. I would say influential because there's something about truly being yourself that inspires other people to do the same. Okay. Sean said more assurance and confidence. Yes. It's a totally different energy. Okay. He just said I would show up even more. Oh, it's okay. No, no worries. I would show up even more. Okay. You would show up more. Are you talking about like in general, online? What do you mean by show up more? Are we talking about networking? Are we talking about online showing up? Are we talking about, I want to get specific so we can like really hold ourselves accountable. Okay, I'll give her a second to answer in the chat. All right, anybody else want to add to that?
I would say, oh,
Oh, okay. He said engaging more with his ideal client. Yeah, that's huge because that's who you want to work with. So you definitely want to get out there and have those conversations and build those
I missed,
relationships so you can make those sales. I'm sorry, what was that?
I missed the question. I think I heard it wrong.
Okay, no problem. I said, what would it look like to step into your next level fully, like as yourself, right? No
Okay.
performance, not the polished version that you think people want to see of you, but who you truly are at like the highest level. What would that look like?
Purpose,
What would that feel like?
purpose fulfilled.
Okay, fulfillment. Ooh, that's
Yeah,
a good word.
fulfillment.
That's a really
Yeah.
good word. Fulfillment, like you're satisfied. I love
Yeah,
that.
I think with fulfillment comes peace for me.
Yes. Okay. Peace, fulfillment. Okay. I love that. So what's stopping you from doing that, guys? That's the real question.
Me?
Everybody. But yeah, you can start off if you want to.
No, that was the answer. Me. I'm stopping myself.
Oh. Okay, I got you. Okay, so that's the answer. All right. Oh, Khadijah said showing up online. Okay, thank you. Yes, yeah, I've been seeing you online more, so that's great, Khadijah. I'm proud of you for that. But yeah, so showing up more online. But my question is, what's stopping us from doing that though, really, if you think about it? Like, what are we really afraid of? What's the worst that could happen? You know? What's stopping you? Anybody else want to add to that? What's stopping you from being that? 100%. Okay. You said getting out of your own way and just doing it. Yeah, I think the execution can be a challenge for some of us. Everybody, it's different things for everyone, right? But I think execution can be sometimes the hardest part because sometimes I don't even say that we're afraid to execute. Sometimes it could be like, I just don't know what to do or how to do it. Sometimes it could be, I don't want to do it and then it fails. Sometimes it could be a whole bunch of different things. So, okay, yeah, consistency is another one too. Being consistent with it, because that takes a lot, right? To be consistent, because there's going to be moments where you don't feel like doing it, where you don't feel like being disciplined, but you still have to show up. Still got to put your best foot forward, still got to produce. So there's going to be those moments. So consistency, definitely, I can understand that one. And I think discipline goes along with that, having the discipline to be consistent. Okay. She said, right? All right. Anybody else want to add to that? Okay. Hey, that's the first step. You're working on it. That's what matters. Love that. Okay. So let me kind of open the floor for a couple questions from you guys because I want to make sure that I have time to answer any questions that you may have for me. So please don't be shy. If you have a question, if you're thinking about something, contemplating something, wondering something, go ahead and ask me. I'd be happy to answer those questions for you. Oh, Sean said sometimes the fear of success can be as paralyzing as the fear of failure. Listen, that's what it was for me, Sean. I'm gonna be honest with you. That was my that was my whole thing because in my mind, I concocted this whole narrative, right? That if I like did too much, I would just be successful. And I had so much to be afraid of because I wouldn't have my privacy anymore. I wouldn't have this anymore. I wouldn't have that. And we tell ourselves all these things, right? We tell ourselves all these things. We create these narratives that are constantly on repeat in our mind every day. And we don't even pay attention to it, but it's just playing there in the background, right? And that's why it's so important to be aware and conscious of your thoughts every day. So you can like dismiss the ones that really aren't true and be aware of them. but yeah, so that's something I definitely had to work through when I was younger is the fear of success. Like I didn't want the pressure and the responsibility and the fear of being successful, of being a leader, right? That weighed on me until I had to face myself and be like, but how much more are you suffering by not walking out your calling and being who you're supposed to be? All right. I had to kind of count the cost there. Okay. But yes, I agree. That's a very good point. Fear of success. Okay. So let's open up the floor for some questions really quick. I want to know what is coming up for you guys right now. What's going on in your world? What questions have you been sitting with as you listen tonight? Maybe a question came up for you. Maybe you were already contemplating something and you want some more clarity. Where is it that you want to go deeper, to dive deeper tonight? So you can come off mute if you want to, drop it in the chat, whichever. I'm here. I just know that the chat kind of takes a second to come through. So if I have a brief pause, I apologize for that, but I'm waiting for the comments in the chat to come through so I can see it on my end. But yeah, what's going on in your world, guys? What's going on with you? What do you need? What questions do you have? Talk to me.
I'm gonna go back to my same thing because it's a real dilemma, something I've been struggling with, right?
Okay, let's do it.
Cause I think Dan, the difference between kingdom and a lot of religious stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
So standing in that gap and being different, but also serving, God's kingdom, but it's like a different space you in. It's like a different space because I'm not. This is not a religious thing, but it's God's kingdom. They're trying to get that word out and standing on that identity. It's kind of it's a little dilemma. Just being honest. Because you want to go to the church and you want to do all the things, but it's certain beliefs just don't align with the kingdom, right? So now when I go to these different events, I'm always out of place. If I go to the business event or if I go to the church event, it almost feel like I'm always out of place unless you find like a real kingdom-minded church, unless you find like a real kingdom-minded people. Because I'm like, let's go impact, let's go dominate, let's go use our gifts and all these things. Not just sit behind these four walls. Let's go out in the community. Let's do our thing. But it's like I almost feel like I'm the only one saying it. If the
My first question to you in response to that is it so bad to be the only one standing in the gap?
No, it's not. But it's definitely not, Kai. It's a calling. It's something that I know I was called to do. That's why the magazine came about. They're trying to explain everything. But that's not bad at all. I'm here for it. Definitely here for it. But
I
it
mean,
just
yeah,
I
don't get
got
me wrong. I understand what you mean about wanting to have that connection and finding like-minded people, right? Because that is important. That's a very important part of our growth. When it comes to business, though, not everybody that you work with is going to be completely aligned with you.
wow.
So there's going to be situations where you are alike in the marketplace, right? There's going to be situations where you're going to encounter people that, like I said, don't think the way you do, don't necessarily believe the way you do, but you have aligned values, right?
Yeah.
It's different for every person. So, right. So there's going to be times where you just have to use discernment, where you have to use wisdom and say, okay, what is the purpose of this relationship? Right?
Yeah.
Is this something where and that's the thing when it comes to, because there's different categories of relationships, right? So you have to know where to place people. So if it's a client, that's one thing, right? If you're
Right.
exploring like business partnerships, that's a little bit different because you want to make sure those values are aligned, right? That's something important. You want to make sure there's character. You want to make sure there's integrity. So in that aspect, yes, you want to make sure that it's definitely aligned in those areas. But not every client, has to believe what you believe to pay you. And a lot of the times, people that actually do pay you are the ones that don't believe what you believe.
No, that's a fact.
So,
That's the dilemma because
mhm.
just say if I'm dealing with a client or and I represent, okay, if you see the guy that's on my cover, I don't really feel like he's very impactful in the community doing things of that nature. But as far as but it's somebody he does his real lifestyle, it don't make it seem like, oh, that's not a godly man, that's not a godly, but he's a real impactful dude in the community. But he still go
Right.
to the, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like being in that space of, I know I'm not articulating the right way, but just being in that space of
You're good.
dealing with certain people, then the other side look at you like, oh, that's not godly. You know what I'm saying? That's not a godly guy. Why you chose him? You know what I mean? Like why you chose him? But the guy's impactful. He does things for the prison reform and all these things. But at the same time, somebody from the church might see his lifestyle and be like, and it make it discredit what you're trying to build as far as kingdom. And and they
Right.
don't want to not they don't want to deal with you because of who you dealing with. I don't know.
I'll just say this statement and I'll leave it at that. A lot of the times the people that have those opinions aren't the ones that pay you. So I'm
That's real.
just
They
gonna
just
leave
be
it at
talking, they be
that.
chirping, right? That's real.
Opinions do not pay your bills.
That's real.
So it's
Just be
okay.
chirping, adding on. You right. You right. You right. You right.
Mhm.
Never support. You got an opinion. That's real.
Don't allow religion to get in the way of your assignment.
Yes.
And that's what I'll say about that.
That's that's a bar.
That's all I gotta say about that.
That's a bar.
Okay. But no, thank you for sharing that because that's a real point of tension for a lot of people that are in ministry but also have business. So I appreciate you sharing that. Okay. Anybody else want to add on? Any questions for me? Anything that's been sitting with you? Anything you want to maybe dive deeper into that we talked about tonight? Anything that you want to share that's coming up for you that we can support you with? Okay. All right. So if everybody is shared, what I do want to do before we get out of here tonight, real quick, is I want you guys to think of one thing from tonight that you want to implement. So we talked about where we think we're doing really strong, where we think we're not. So for a lot of you, that area was structure that you want to improve a little bit more. For some of you, it was identity. So take a moment and think about one thing you can do this month to improve the area where you didn't feel as strong. One thing you can do, whether that's getting clarity on a certain area, whether that's finding a tool or some type of system that can support what you're building, whatever it is for you, think of one action that you can take. Okay. And let's go ahead and put it in the chat so I can hold you guys accountable. One action before we get out of here. We have a couple minutes left. So one action that you're going to take this month to improve that area where you know it's probably not as strong. Whether it was structure, identity, positioning, whatever it was for you.
You said, what's one thing we're gonna do for
Yeah,
that?
one simple thing you can do to start improving that area that you said was a little bit weaker. So some of you said structure, some of you said identity. So whichever area you felt like needed a little bit more work out of those three that we talked about, just one thing you can do to start making a step in the right direction.
For me, I think I've already done it, and that's jumping on this call. It's structure. And so
Awesome.
understanding, okay, I know it is structure now. What does that look like? So having conversations about it for me is the next step, and now dialoguing about what that looks like.
Okay, awesome. Okay. And thank you for coming. I'm really glad you came tonight. Okay. All right. So before we hop off tonight, let me just say a couple more things. So this community shows up month after month, right? Conversation after conversation. You guys, you come, you do the work, you ask questions, and I love that. Thank you. Keep doing that. And I love the dialogue. and you hold space for each other in ways that a lot of free communities don't really do. Right. And so I don't take that lightly. So I want to let you guys know that I appreciate you. And so we opened up this Ascension series tonight. We have more conversations about Ascension that are coming up in May and in June. But this is definitely going to be a season of movement and execution for this community. And I am so honored to be building with you guys and evolving out loud with you guys. So if you want to revisit tonight's conversation, because I know there may be parts where you may want to take notes, or even any of the other previous lives about governance and all the other ones that we've done this year, everything that we do in this community lives on our Leader Tribe Hub. So I'm going to put the link in the chat for you guys really quick so you can check that out. And that's where you're going to find, curated replays. That's where you'll be able to sign up for the next live that we have coming up and everything that you basically need to stay informed and stay connected in the community. So I'm going to go ahead and put that link right now in the chat for you guys. So you can check that out, copy and paste it, put it in your notepad, whatever you have to do. But that's where you can find everything that we're doing and that we're building in here. And speaking of the next live, let's go ahead and mark our calendars for May. I think it's the 13th of May as our next one. And we're going to be talking about, we were going to be talking about the architecture of Ascension, but I'm kind of leaning towards momentum now that we had this conversation. So we're going deep into the structure that makes Ascension sustainable. So you guys don't want to miss that one. Put it in your calendars for me. And for those of you that were on the live tonight and you want to dive deeper into these areas with me, just let me know, because I do offer a diagnostic call where we can kind of go through what you're building together, and I can give you some more clarity on what it is that you're building. So let me know and I can get you the link for that as well. But yeah, so we have a lot going on in the community right now, and I appreciate you all for being a part of it. And yeah, I think we're definitely going to be ascending together. So it's going to be great. Okay, so any final questions before we go? Because it is 9 o'clock and I want to respect everybody's time.
Yes. Will we be able to find, you just mentioned if we want to dive deeper, just let you know, is that like a link we send something to, or email, or?
Let me put that link in the chat for you. Give me 1 second. No problem. All right. Anybody else before we hop off? Questions? Favorite takeaway? Anything you want to share tonight before we go?
No, this was good and rich. This is
Thank you.
something that I prayed about, but didn't know what that actually looked like, and it showed me some areas that I'm glad I'm here. It's like the receiver runs the route, and the quarterback and the ball is right where it needs to be. So is it 1st and 10 or is it touchdown? But thank you.
Come on, analogies. You're so welcome. Okay, so the link is in the chat for you all if you are interested in doing the diagnostic call with me. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. You're welcome, Khadija. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate you all. And I will see you next month. Have a good night, everybody. And the links are in the chat if you need them, okay? I'll stay on for an extra minute just in case you guys need to copy and paste that. Alrighty. You're welcome. Thank you. I need to make some more tea. That was really good. All right. Thanks for coming, Grind. Appreciate you. Thank you, Sean. Oh, you can't. Okay, I'll text it to you. No worries. I'll text you.